talk. We wanted to talk in this episode about boundaries in the relationships, and especially within our families, as there is, so much turmoil and expansion of awareness right now happening to what is happening to different people in the world, how we are all interconnected. We can't really tune out and think, okay, it's happening somewhere there. It has nothing to do with me. Well, it does. And when me and Norelyn were now discussing it and bringing it to our lives, so both of us, we live in California, our background, we spoke about it in the episode about immigration, and but still in the here and now, our life is here in California. Our physical body exists here in California, and here in California, the way, I would say the way battle is happening, it's in the conversation between members of the family. And what's happening for me is that I was seeing these messages, so there has been this movement of self-development, self-love, self-compassion, taking attention to yourself, doing your practices, soothing, calming, reclaiming responsibility for your peace and working on that within yourself. So there's this evolution of consciousness that has been happening, but then you still exist as a body in the network. And within this network, there are people with very different opinions, with very different, all kinds of behaviors and patterns. And I suggested, let's talk about boundaries, because this is something that is not, I think we are all trying to figure this out. I have some insights on this. I know Norelyn has insights on this. How do we know when it's a time to say, I cannot talk to you anymore? That kind of a boundary that sometimes you might have to put with your partner, with your parent, with your aunt, with your uncle. When do we get to this point? Because it's actually very, very radical, I would say. And that's where I also wanted to have a conversation, that when I see on Instagrams, these posts are popping up that, oh, if you're uncomfortable, or if the relationship is stressful, then by all means disconnect. But what people don't realize, they're talking about their parents. They're talking about people who are their family. And I really, from my observation, from what I've seen from years of sitting with people in psychotherapy, I came to a conclusion it's not healthy. We have to be very careful where it's actually serving us, and it's a rightful boundary, it's a rightful distancing, and where it's really abandoning the people who are our strongest allies. And that is going to be hurtful to our mental health, because we are all interconnected, right? Are we essentially continuing to be the element that brings forth peace, communication, love, kindness, evolution? Or are we becoming so self-involved and detached that it's becoming destructive to the self and to the network?
And I want to go back to your question. How do we know when is the point to say, I can't talk about this anymore, or I'm not willing to go down this path with you right now? And what came for me when I was thinking about that question was, well, before I snap, before somatically I have a break. So in order to move that line a little back and find when we have a boundary, we have to be in touch with ourselves somatically. For example, if you're in a conversation with a loved one and you kind of already know that they have an opinion that's going to trigger you, and you already know that their style of communicating is going to be disrespectful, you likely go into that conversation or arrive at their house or pick up the phone already with a sense of this tightness in your body or a procrastination to call them back. And I've started listening to these messages where I used to maybe label them, oh, maybe I'm just too busy, but why is it that I've routinely not called a family member back or text them back, especially when tensions are high in this political space and this world space? And sometimes it's because, oh, I know that this family member is likely going to make an offhanded comment, and I'm avoiding that because I know it'll come. So once we can sense these little resistances and procrastinations for keeping the cycle of communication going, then we must decide, okay, well, is it possible to verbally state a boundary with that person? And that's easier said than done. Sometimes I think many of our close people, the first time a boundary like that is presented, they can take offense. But that's where we start protecting ourselves and also giving them respect. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about creating a boundary like you described of, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to them and I'm going to retreat. And this goes for our family, this goes for chosen family as well. I'm extending this language to include friends, right? Friends sometimes are in our lives more frequently than family members on a day-to-day basis. So any of these people in our orbit, I check in with my nervous system to see if I notice these patterns of avoidance. And then maybe I can create boundaries with time of day. Like there's a family member in particular that I'm thinking of. I will not disclose who this person is, but I've acknowledged that I cannot talk with them at the end of my workday and before my husband comes home. Because I need to, if I'm going to receive any messages from this member that might get into a heated conversation, I want to allow myself to have the space to deconnect from that conversation, come back to myself, and then be present for my husband when he comes home. This happened 2 days ago. I came home, my husband came to kiss me. I was so angry. And then he was like, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'm so sorry. I just got off the phone with so-and-so." And he said, "Aha." And that was an indicator for me that, okay, can I be in control of when I talk to this person, but still not sever the connection?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to highlight a few things that you said. So one is awareness of I have my consciousness that I am in charge of, my attention that I am in charge of, and I decide where to place it. And if I notice, if I have this habit to have my consciousness, to have my awareness live within my body, within the soma, within the somatic experience, within the breath, that in itself is very self-regulatory and harmonizing. And I think I can say that both me and Norelyn, again, to highlight it many, many times, we are strong advocates for you, our dear listener, to do that, to understand that this must be your number one priority. I think I'm right to say that in the new world that we are now transitioning into, growing into, and have been growing into for a while, this is a process that you can see is happening in the world. Because at the end of the day, soul, psyche, heart thrives in peaceful, harmonious, nature-bound environment. We went as a mind, as consciousness with the technological revolution, we went away from it. We got into unhealthy relationship with the nature, which backfired at us. Now we are coming back again into, oh my goodness, this is so valuable, this is so precious to be alive, to be bound to nature, to have the space within your day to reflect, to be present. Now, I know that we are not existing in equal conditions. And what I found, someone who is a Russian, Ukrainian, Jewish, Israeli, now to America, right? Like doing this journey through my entire life, that being angry about it, being resentful, or being like, oh, this world is blah, 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 blah. It serves me only in a way that I can stay connected to my anger and I can release it consciously, understanding that I'm now connecting to this energy, understand why this energy is moving through me, but I'm not married to this energy. I'm not going to stuck as a pattern within this energy. So, okay, so I felt anger, I felt heat, I allowed it to move, but what I ultimately want to keep doing, this is also yoga to me, is continuing and anchoring and centering into my center, taking responsibility, center, entering into my center. So I wanted to highlight it because what Norelyn, I think you've been describing is that I want to highlight it because this is where your strength is. You reflect, you dwell in it, and then you're able to say, okay, it's not going to help to anyone if I have to sit with this other person who is my family member, we are connected, maybe I even love them, I love them. And in some other ways, they're wonderful to me. I can tell you that I have very heated for me, there's a lot of heat comes up in a relationship with my father. We are seeing things differently, politically, very differently. In some ways, we are at the same time part of the same people who are struggling and dealing with the same hatred and war, essentially, for, again, centuries upon centuries. So there is this commonality, there is this difference. And then there is also a difference, how do we talk and how much we have been entrenched within patriarchy. So that's what I see, that as a world, we are shaking off this thing that is not good for women, it's not good for men because it's hierarchical, because something about this dualistic nature, it's also hierarchical and it's also splitting by the nature of the ideology. It took us all this time as a consciousness to start to understand it. We're very new in terms of coming out of it, in places like Europe, right? Like United States, and still, right? So here's this person, my father. In some ways, this is the who loves me, and I can feel his love. On the other hand, it's also someone in whom I see just that consciousness who've been in this world and the time that he has been born into it, with the experiences he had to have, that brought him to the point where we can't really have a conversation because he wants to lecture me. And I need to continuously bring awareness to, Dad, I love you, but I'm done. I've been listening to you for my entire life. At 44, if we cannot have a dialogue, and we can laugh about it, I can be like, it's been kind of also funny because there is a precipice of love that we were able to kind of do this, but it's true that the answer comes around the boundary where I'm very much reclaiming the energy to what is deeply rightful for my heart. And I would also bring to this awareness that I cannot unmarry my father. I can unmarry my partner, but I cannot be, there are some relationships, it's almost like there are some boundaries that are set by life. This is just one example, right? Our parent, our father, who is coming from this other generation, where where I personally feel excitement at this point to see what happens if I stream love, compassion, and hope into this relationship and healing into this relationship, which sometimes means I'm only going to talk to you this amount of time. I'm going to put boundaries around how we talk. The moment you begin to push into me narratives that I don't agree with, I'm going to be telling you that I love you, I disagree with you, please don't. You know, he's a strong Netanyahu supporter. I'm a strong oppositioner to Netanyahu. I know this conversation is important because it's a part of the collective healing, not only within Jewish community, but for the larger community, right? We're all, because essentially we want to come to the place where we can coexist, where we can not want the other not to exist on this planet.
Yeah, and I love that phrase, precipice of love, and this excitement that you're looking towards, that the ever evolving relationship with your father. And yeah, I was thinking about how when we're met with a different opinion that has a convenient label, like a supporter of this, or this political party, or I believe in this conspiracy theory, or yeah, all of these things, when there's these packages where there's this headline of supporter of this, automatically there's a schema, a costume that we place on the other person. And if we're not careful, especially when we're watching social media posts of our friends and a reshare, there's these convenient little schemas that we latch onto. Oh, I didn't know my friend believed in that. Then all of a sudden there's this stickiness, this energy, this avoidance, like, ugh, I wish I didn't know my friends or my uncles or cousins, whoever. I wish I didn't even see their Instagram or their Facebook, because now I know they're this supporter. So
And we attach so much meaning, wait a second, and we attach so much meaning to people's beliefs and support. So that too, right? If you support this person, then this is the whole thing, this is what it means. We can go this route, but this route is going to be pulling us apart and creating polarization versus, can we stay, I know you deep on the soul level. I know, it's like with my father, one thing that he actually did always, and he told me to do this, we couldn't get into heated arguments and discussions. So also in our culture, and there is this, two Jewish people, three opinions. Well, not three, 10 million opinions. So there is this space for having different opinions. And I think also maybe a part of like Middle Eastern Israeli then contribution, because in Israel, Jews from all these different parts of the world met, Ashkenazi Jews, Mizrahi Jews from Arab countries, from East, from different places. That it's like the fact that a person has strong feelings does not necessarily, it doesn't make them a terrible person that I can't be around. It's true, I will be putting my boundaries. It's true, I'm going to be, because I'm very gentle, I'm going to be creating something. I've been a gentle advocate in my family. But also what my dad taught me, that you can, at the end of every confrontation, you can look into each other's eyes and I can feel, I can see his soul. I can see his heart. It's funny because he would say, like, there is no such a thing as soul. He's a doctor. He's intellectual. But of course, his eyes often, when he looks at me, there is this basic love that he would say, I love you. And I would look at him and I will say, I love you. That is something that we must cultivate. We must cultivate.
yeah, and And it can be really hard to come back to a place if there's been deep wounding and both people are very angry, and have feel like they were not only in a heated discussion, but actually made to feel less than in their beliefs or actually disrespected based off of these schemas I was talking about. It can take a lot. It can take a lot of time to repair. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, or actually, I think it was a TikTok video. Can't remember the creator, but this man was telling this story about how he's currently taking care of his mother, who's currently in need of some physical care, all the way to the point of like showering her. And like, he's like, it's very difficult. And it sounds like he also had maybe emotionally difficult relationship with her as well. But he said something that has stuck with me the last couple of days, where though it's been a burden, and he's like, it's hard to say that it's been a burden for him. He knows it's his duty to care for his mom in this way, but it's a complicated thing. So though it's a burden, he's been looking at taking care of her as a form of prayer. And that hit me like so heavily and beautifully, because I thought, wow, if I could look at these difficult conversations that I'm having with my family member that is leaving me with fists and stress, and my husband's like, what's going on? Like, can I look at this conversation with him as a way of prayer? Because as long as I'm taking care of my boundaries, when I say, look, if the voices don't come down, if we don't stop yelling, phone calls over, right? Taking it down to where my nervous system is safe again. And if I take care of myself in that way, then we can talk about anything. And at that point, then the energy shifted, this sense of prayer, this giving back, because at this point in my life, this person has been with me for, this deep history. And how can I give back? And I can do so by meeting him where he is. And then, regardless of your faith, this word prayer, maybe I can insert a different word as well, but I'm just going to keep repeating it. Like, do you have any other
Mhm.
words that come to your mind if you look at
No,
holding space?
I think, yeah, I think that's just one way to put it. But what came up to me when you were talking, listen, people ask me sometimes, Ira, what can we do? We understand. I have to say that a lot of, I think a lot of, um, I think quite a lot of people in US, I can say it at this point, around me that I meet, are not aware and connected to their privilege of simply being born and living in a state where you have access to food, to water, to education. You have so much wealth surrounding you, and of course peaceful sky. But then there are also people who begin to be very aware, and then there is this itchiness and guilt, or you can call it guilt, but I like to use the word actually itchiness. They begin, you connect, you're a compassionate person, so you understand that I have so much, and there is this happening. Like, how can I be here? What can we do? And I come back to this again. I think I'll say a little more. The way I see it, there is one consciousness. There is one consciousness. It's like a huge microbiome. So we now know that our bodies are regulated from our gut. There is this personal network, but really the consciousness is experiencing itself and being aware of itself and regulating itself through the history of humanity. So that means that the same consciousness is fighting the war physically, Iran, Israel. The same consciousness is also fighting more like a different psychological war. through us in US and in the relationships. So how is it connected to the story of a man realizing, yes, there is a part of me that is, it's not fun to take care of another person who is in, having all these difficulties and challenges. It is hard, it's objective, it's true, it's honest, it's authentic. And at the same time, recognition that I have as a consciousness here opportunity by the way I change my attitude to the boundaries and conditions that I can't really change, right? The way we spoke before, these are your parents, you're a child, you're probably going to have children. If you are not going to have children, then at least understand that has its own set of pluses and minuses, right? But I can tell that the moment I had children, my compassion for my parents grew so much. From the psychology student who put my parents through quite difficult conversations of letting them know how they did me wrong in many different ways. Eventually, I came to understand that, oh my goodness, they were not only raising me and giving me the most precious thing they gave me is love. Because with all the things that were happening, I always knew that they loved me. They sometimes didn't understand me. They sometimes were judgmental of me. They sometimes thought that I'm less than or not as, I'm naive, I don't understand. But they always loved and they did what they could given the conditions that they were living in. They were working so hard, right? So and sometimes this is the only thing that you can offer is a really prayer, because when you deal with a parent or with a family member who is objectively hard to be with, whether because they're in how you describe in the story that it's just hard to take care of another person with disabilities, or it's because they have those beliefs and opinions in even the way of talking, that now we are ready with awareness that we have because of the privilege of living in this peaceful, abundant reality, right? So in a sense, if we connect all the dots, we can understand, okay, yes, my parent is like that. But the reason I'm even able to see it and to reflect and to create something different now in my relationship with my partner is because of the conditions that that same parent created for me. They were not able to access that level of awareness that I have right now. And I might not be able to change this. They might already be way too much in the costume that they have developed, right? But I can put in the space between us, the prayer, which is essentially energy of the heart that is hope. I hope for the spirit, for the heart that is one, right? Here I'm connecting consciously to the oneness of collective. Do you feel what is happening? Because for me, it's like right away, I even have an impulse to stop speaking because it's just like, yes, it's like this two come together. We are
Yeah.
healing the conflict. We are healing the conflict in those dynamics, in those changes of the perspective where we decide, am I going to continue and be kind of self-centered, me person,
Mm-hmm.
and that will be pulling things apart, it will be polarizing, it will be feeding the conflict? Or am I, but also I don't want to go into the place where it's like the other. This is the collectivistic cultures. I'm not important. I'm here in the service of, for women, it has been so much for men too, right? Men literally were expected to serve with their bodies, with their lives. No, I'm not going there. I'm not going here. I'm now figuring out this twilight zone where I know what I want. I now know what my dream is. My dream is of peace, of unity, of coexistence. Then what can I do in the moment to maintain that within my headspace, body space? and the prayer offered to a wounded parent, or a prayer offered to a parent who is and or into the relationship that is challenging, is a prayer offered to me who is struggling as well.
Yeah, that's a powerful shift that will certainly give back in the other direction. And yeah, because the last thing we need is to be more polarized. And I think a closing sort of thought that's coming to mind is something I also recently heard on this podcast, the Duncan Trussell podcast. He was talking about, he was speaking with somebody who was talking about this concept of these costumes, and what if you're in conversation with somebody who has strong opinions about these two populations that they're not even a part of, right? So you can have two people talking about arguing about populations, land that they've never been to, right? Which is wild.
In itself is a very interesting case, right? When people have such strong yeah.
And we can all feel righteous in our opinion and in support of whichever population we are arguing for and holding up the signs for. And this guest speaker was talking about how, well, if you ever find yourself in a conversation like that, and you feel like this energy coming towards you, and this other person's like arguing to a point of where you feel disrespected, remind them, hey, talk to me as if I'm one of those people, if I am that culture. Like, I'm a human being. I'm not this costume. I'm not this XYZ supporter. Talk to me as if I'm the human being that you're trying to support over there in that land. Or, bringing it back home, like if it's that close family member, like finding those ways to shift their perspective and say, hey, how about you try saying that again, but like say it to me, and going back to that moment where you look at your dad in the eyes at the end of a conversation and see if he can like say it to you, versus like he's an intellectual, he's a doctor, he's very good at thinking and thinking and thinking, versus maybe feeling, where you're in your body more, right?
Or being
So
aware that it's important how you speak. It's important how you speak, because the voice, the vibration of the sound,
wow,
it's
yeah.
touching me. It's this awareness is something where I have to step up as a teacher. And I can tell you that through this time, there was a moment when I actually yelled at my dad, first time in my life. And I had mixed feelings about it for sure. I didn't do that anymore, but I definitely right now with him feeling very comfortable to speak over him, which is something that I usually not, or like, but
I can
and that's what
relate
I
to that.
right. But I want to also kind of, and then there's a part of me that is able to kind of step outside and see me and my dad from from the third person perspective. And I want to empower people to listen, if your parents are in this style that is kind of more aggressive and they're talking over, then of course you'll have to talk over. You'll have to talk over, or you'll have to do, we are not going to talk about the subject. If we are not able to have a conversation that is civil about the subject, we are going to put it aside. Yeah, yeah. I wonder if it's time for us maybe to wrap this
Yeah.
episode and just to wish all of us, on the final notice, on the final note, to add that just staying present to yourself is important. It's a win. Offering prayer to the family members, to your friends, even if you're not talking to them, maybe with some cases you decide that you cannot do it because the person is continuously going to be disrespecting your boundaries, they're continuously going to be putting you down, and you just cannot afford this because you're trying to build health and you're trying to build something different. Offering a prayer is going to be beneficial for them and for you because you're going not to be holding this energy of hatred. This is what essentially we are now in the process of cleansing out of our collective system. And three, don't be afraid to put yourself or what you need to say forward. And if you are with that person whose style is kind of more like that, then you can be what I find is just personal. I don't know. I wonder what people will say, and you're welcome, to reflect and share with us in the comments below this video. But I find it's okay. What is helpful though is that I continue. I can be kind of strong and forward in terms of what I'm saying, but I'm continued to be connected to my breath. And I continue to have a prayer within the conversation. I know my father is not my enemy, never. And I personally a very strong advocate to be able to have conversations, I even with my friends, with some of my friends, I actually have been aware that what is important is whether the person is helping me, whether they are kind to me. And the fact that we can have very different opinions, I never want that to be something that will rupture a relationship.
Right.
Different people, we're looking at reality from different angles. Some subjects may be off the table because we get too activated. But my friends are defined by how kind they are to me. And if the person is kind and if they're caring and helping and having that, that is so precious. I wouldn't cancel it because we have differences of opinions.
Beautiful.